Since I have now knocked out both Ducktales Christmas episodes for this version, I may as well take care of the Halloween sandwich between them. Halloween has come to Duckburg, with the boys and Webby getting ready to go trick-or-treating. During this, Webby goes into the history of her costume and the folklore of Halloween, including the ancient Celtics using candy as a way to appease demons with all the gravitas of a small duck child.
I'm a pirate on vacation.
In addition, Huey is obviously Gizmo Duck, which is a little weird given Fenton is his friend, and Louie is going as Huey. Also,
leave this house!
One spooky theme rendition later, every occupant of the house, including Donald and Della, are outside the mansion because Scrooge has locked the house down for the night. Turns out, Scrooge is just as excited to go trick-or-treating as the kids, citing his nostalgia for Halloween being the one night a year when someone as poor as Scrooge was as a kid to be able to receive as much free candy as possible.
Back in Glasgow, this was the one night a year I could eat sweets like a rich man's son.
The reason he just kicked everybody out is Scrooge will happily get free candy, but giving it is another matter entirely.
Oh no! It appears someone has taken all the candy already.
This actually disappoints Della and Donald, as Donald likes giving out candy, and Della was planning to use the mansion as a haunted house. So Scrooge tells him if they want to do that stuff, they should just go to Launchpad's place.
Oh boy, Launchpad's house. Cheesy movies, handing out candy, not terrifying kids. In a fun way.
It probably doesn't help that ever since getting back to Earth, Della has not particularly cared for Launchpad. In part, it's because Scrooge's personal chauffeur/pilot used to be her job, which stings really bad given the fact that Launchpad is really, really bad at driving. Heading back to the kids who are going over their treat agenda, with Huey detailing what houses they should hit, Louie proposes an alternative solution. Hit one place with as much candy as possible.
We're going to a candy store?
No, it's nighttime. Candy stores are closed.
We're gonna rob a candy store?
Ugh, no.
Louie is actually suggesting that they go to Hazel House, which according to local legend is not only the oldest house in Duckburg, but is also believed to have been built on top of a gateway between the living and the dead. The more important point, though, is that any trick-or-treater that dares enter disappears.
Which means there's years worth of free candy inside!
Yar! A treasure fit for a relaxed buccaneer!
Louie has to figure that if they can collect all that candy, they'll never have to go trick-or-treating again. Huey isn't too keen on the concept, though, believing that since he's never heard of it before, it's probably fake. But since everybody else is going, they enter the house. Now, I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm actually going to sidestep the A plot and put it aside to focus on the B plot with Donald, Della, and Launchpad. I'm doing this because I want you to be able to experience the main story without being interrupted by the B story. So Della and Donald arrive at Launchpad's place, to find it surrounded by detritus and Launchpad acting weird, wearing a Mighty Ducks goalie mask and brandishing an electrical handsaw, which Della finds awesome.
Look at the authenticity! I was wrong, Launchpad is a pro!
Seeing this as the perfect haunted house opportunity. A short while later, after getting situated, Della realizes after Launchpad scares a bunch of small kids away that something is really wrong here. Namely, Launchpad is claiming this is all his fault.
What do you think is going on here?
Now in his actual house, Launchpad explains that when he was a child on October 31st, he entered a strange house and read from an ancient scroll, and when he came out, Duckburg was now infested by monsters who go house to house stealing people's souls.
You mean trick-or-treaters?
Or, to put it another way, Launchpad, after inexplicably crashing his trike so hard it burst into flames, wandered into Hazel House and read the back of a candy wrapper, and by the time he came back out, Halloween had started, and Launchpad, having grossly misinterpreted what he was seeing, is now convinced he cursed Duckburg. So, ever since, he spent Halloween trying to ward what he thinks are monsters off, having somehow evaded any opportunity which, assuming Duckburg is pretty much like a normal city, would include department stores putting Halloween stuff out in July to figure out the truth.
So, to be clear, you think this night is a monster curse that you unleashed on Duckburg as a child?
And to Donald's credit, he does try to explain, but if you hadn't noticed, Launchpad isn't exactly the brightest flame on the candelabra, so he thinks Donald is saying souls are candy to monsters. This is also not as huge a deterrent to Della's haunted house plan as you would think.
This is perfect! Real scares! The kids will think it's real because Launchpad thinks it's real!
What does stymie that plan, though, is that while Donald and Della fight over what to do, Launchpad hears another trick-or-treater, Scrooge, and not recognizing his boss, after his patented yell to make him leave plan fails, Launchpad attempts to fight Scrooge off with the saw, culminating in throwing Scrooge into his own sack. After said fight, Launchpad concludes that he has to go back to Hazel House to try and refine the scroll to undo everything and end this nightmare, charging off into the night with a buzzsaw. Donald and Della following him to make sure he does not hurt anybody. While that was going on, the boys and Webby, having already entered Hazel House, follow a trail of candy wrappers, then Dewey into a room filled with old toys.
No.
Encountering a not-so-wee puppet man. Escaping further into the house, the kids run into a clown, several monstrous appendages, and a blob monster. To try and get away from them on top of the puppets, egressing to the house's cemetery. Following that, Huey, trying to get his night back under control, consults his map to try and find a more suitable place to get candy, which is halted when Louie takes the map and realizes that Huey actually knew about the house before Louie even said anything.
You knew about this? No!
Okay, fine. Yes.
Trouble is, those two are so busy arguing that they don't even notice that a stringy-haired ghost woman just crawled out of the well and is now heading toward them. But Dewey sure noticed.
Now! Escape!
Attempting to escape her, the clown, the puppet, and the various monsters return to ambush them. Whilst being cornered by said aforementioned monsters, the kids, without realizing, let slip they don't have any candy on them, which causes something weird to happen.
No candy?
What do you mean, no candy?
Revealing that this whole haunted house thing was a scam. The monsters who were chasing them were actually completely different monsters, pretending to be them. The Weld Woman is a witch, the puppet is a vampire, the clown is a were-duck, and the various other monsters are just the limbs of Frankenstein. And before you semantics me with how the character from the original Frankenstein novel is not Frankenstein, instead being called the Monster, he's listed as Frankenstein in the credits. The blob monster is just a blob monster, though. They are also, all things considered, pretty chill.
Pirate on vacation?
Arr!
Nice.
Furthermore, the witch seems to be this show's version of the classic Disney character Witch Hazel, given that's what her name is listed in the credits. Oh, and here's a little fun trivia for you. In addition to Frankenstein being played by Clancy Brown, the Were-Duck is Doug Jones, Witch Hazel is Selma Blair, and Nosferatu is James Marsters. So, in the episode, the kids were being chased by Billy Butcherson from Hocus Pocus, Liz Sherman from Hellboy, Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and a Highlander. Anyway, more to the point, all these monsters set up this whole thing and have been doing so for centuries to scare kids into giving away their candy on Halloween.
Candy's the only good reason to celebrate this holiday that is, frankly, pretty offensive to monsters.
Now, at this moment, you may have a very specific, understandable question. If they're already monsters, why are they dressing up as monsters?
Kids today don't appreciate the classics. You're scared of, random kid stuff. Puppets, clowns, little girls in wells.
During this, Huey and Louie go off on their own, and Huey explains that back when they just lived with Donald, even though it was just normal old trick-or-treating, it still meant something to him, and if Louie's plan succeeded, they'd never need to do it ever again.
I don't want this to be our last Halloween.
Here's the awkward thing, though. The monsters are actually pretty annoyed right now, given that they just spent the night trying to scare kids with no candy, and they can't exactly restart the whole thing over again, given it's midnight, and by now most everybody is already at home. So they're gonna get what they want one way or the other.
Webby? What happened when the Celtics ran out of treats to appease the demons with?
Usually they fed on children. Oh dear.
So hey, remember how Launchpad was on his way to Hazel House? Well, guess who shows up to save the kids? As it may not surprise you to learn, seeing a huge dude coming at you with a buzzsaw scares the crap out of the monsters, causing them to flee into the house. Launchpad's accidental rampage is only halted when Scrooge shows up looking for candy, causing a piece to come out of his bag and Launchpad to mistake its wrapper for the scroll.
Monosodium glutamate sucralose polysorbate blue 52 fructose corn syrup artificial flavoring.
Now, in fairness to Launchpad, most ingredient lists of candy sound like some kind of eldritch text. Now that everything is calmed down, the monsters were actually very impressed by Launchpad and now seem as a source of inspiration. Launchpad is of course extremely confused as to why all the monsters are still here, given he thought reading the scroll again would fix everything.
Yeah, he doesn't know what Halloween is.
Later, after convincing Scrooge to give out candy this year, Huey and Louie have finally helped Launchpad understand Halloween. He does now think it's called Hallowoon, so he still is a little confused, but he does get the idea now. The monsters are also content to get their candy this year from Scrooge, who's taking advantage of the situation by charging admission.